Okay. Get on the right page here. So this portion, we're opening up a new scroll today, the scroll of Exodus or Shemot. And this Torah portion is, it's one of those portions that is really appropriately named. Most Torah portions, I don't know how this exactly relates to the whole portion, but this one very much does. It's names, and names are important. And in this section of Scripture, we're going to be revealed the name of our Father in heaven. He's going to reveal his name, and it's not, I don't think the emphasis is on what exactly it is that we're reading, what's the pronunciation, how is it spelled, these kind of things. We're going to see what's behind it. Because everyone has a name, or if you don't, you should get a name. We're all going to have a new name one day. But if I were to say, like, the name Adolf, there's kind of like, we hear that name, there's like a cringe almost, like there's an association with that name, and it's not the way that I pronounce it. I could have said Adolf. It's not the syllables Adolf. It's what's behind the name. It's what's we think about that's associated with that. And so it is with all of us and with God as well, that there's going to be this reputation that is associated with the name. And God wants to establish his reputation in this kind of early section of Exodus. Probably the first 15, 17 chapters or so are kind of God introducing himself the way he wants to be introduced. So we'll get into that when we get to chapter 3. But I'm going to just go ahead and read some and comment, pause, comment, read more, pause and comment. So we'll start chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "And these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each man with his household. They came: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. And all these persons springing from the loins of Jacob were 70 persons. But Joseph was in Egypt. And Joseph died, and all his brothers with him, all that generation. And the sons of Israel were fruitful and swarmed and multiplied and grew very vast, and the land was filled with them." So since Genesis, since they had come down from Canaan, there's different theories as to whether this was 400 years have passed. There's a lesser held theory that it was about 215 years. I kind of go with that, but I don't want to go into all the math to explain myself. So I'm not real zealous about it. Either way, a long period of time has passed, and they have been fruitful in the land. And I think that is kind of the key word, because this is kind of Edenic. This is Garden of Eden language here, that they have been fruitful, and they're swarmed, and they've multiplied. And we're going to see this theme kind of playing out through these chapters. So kind of have your Genesis chapters 1 through 4 glasses on as you go through here, and you'll see a lot of allusions to the creation narrative, or at least just after the creation. And it says, "A new king arose over Egypt who knew not Joseph. And he said to his people, 'Look, the people of the sons of Israel is more numerous and vaster than we. Come, let us be shrewd with them, lest they multiply. And then, should war occur, they will actually join our enemies and fight against us and go up from the land.' And they set over them forced labor foremen, so as to abuse them with their burdens. And they built store cities for Pharaoh, Pithom and Ramses. And as they abused them, so did they multiply, and so did they spread. And they came to loathe the Israelites. And the Egyptians put the Israelites to work of crushing labor, made their lives bitter with hard work, mortar and bricks, and every work of the field. All their crushing work they performed." So a new king arises, and he doesn't know Joseph. Now, he may cognitively have been familiar with the past, but he doesn't respect that or have any appreciation or hold anything dear to that. He's not holding that to their credit. He sees them now in kind of this strange position where he's concerned about their growth. He's concerned that they'll take over him, But then he doesn't want them to leave. He's concerned that they'll rise up against us, and he's also concerned that they'll go up from the land. So here, as he says, come, let us. This is language from the Tower of Babel. And then he says, let us be shrewd, or perhaps crafty. And this is serpent language. This is like the serpent in Eden that is trying to deal shrewdly and craftily. And he's concerned. He sees these people as people that could rebel against him, but also they're kind of a commodity to him that he can find value, and he doesn't want them to leave. So it's a strange position. So he has to deal shrewdly to keep them there and to get what he needs from them, but not let them grow too strong. So he puts them to use, makes them slaves or debt slaves to build things for them. And then they are put to crushing labor. Their lives are made bitter with hard work in the field, which is very much like what God said would happen to them after the tree of knowledge of good and evil incident, that there would be hard work involved. But a little bit different is that in the midst of that, they are still multiplying greatly, despite all the tribulation. Then it says, and the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other named Puah, and he said, when you deliver the Hebrew women and look on the birth stool, if it is a boy, you shall put him to death, and if it is a girl, she may live. And the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt had spoken to them, and they let the children live. And the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why did you do this thing and let the children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, for not like the Egyptian women are the Hebrew women, for they are hardy. Before the midwives come to them, they give birth. So we have these two women that are named, while the king of Egypt is not named. And these women fear God more than they fear the king, which is a wonderful thing. And it's highly recommended that we all behave in that manner. As I think it's Peter in Acts mentions the same thing, like fear God rather than men. And so these women fear God more than they fear man, and they're willing to let the children live. They become kind of like in this narrative, a better version of Eve, is that they're helping to produce life by not throwing them or having them killed. And it seems like they're just doing their job as normal, but they kind of, it seems to me, I could be wrong, it seems to me that they're being deceiving, that the women are giving birth before they come. So the way I'm interpreting is that they're being wise as serpents. So they're kind of using the same, he's being shifty and crafty towards them, and they're kind of being crafty back to him and being shrewd. And so as wise as serpents, but innocent as doves. So in the Torah, we're often talk about this concept of like the weightier matters of like, does it help life? Is it good for life? And we want to interpret the commandments through a lens that helps to produce life. And they see that the high value is life in this instance. So a little bit of deceiving of Pharaoh for the sake of saving life seems to be fine with them. At least that's the way that I'm interpreting it. And God makes it go well for the midwives. It says, and the people multiplied and became very fast. So once again, we get more multiplication, despite all the hardship. And inasmuch the midwives feared God, he made for them households. And Pharaoh charged his people, saying, every boy that is born you shall fling into the Nile. Every girl you shall let live. A little bit of kind of ancient context on this is that this idea of casting people into a river or into water was kind of a well-established thing in the ancient world, especially the Near East. And so what we found when we studied the Code of Hammurabi is an ancient law code. It was actually written before Moses writes the Torah. And it has all these different codes of what is right and wrong according to, I guess, Hammurabi. And there's a lot of things that are similar, but there's differences between the Torah. And so the Torah is kind of like showing is written in a way that is familiar with the culture around it, but it is setting the right path on what God thinks is right and wrong. And one of the things in the Code of Hammurabi is that there's a scenario where somebody makes an accusation against a person. I don't remember what the accusation is for, but if there's no witnesses, they don't know. And so it's called trial by ordeal. And what you do is you take the person that's been accused and you toss them into the river, and then you let the gods decide whether he's guilty or innocent. If he's guilty, he's going to die in the river. But if he makes it out of the river alive, he's declared innocent, and the accuser is sent into the water. Now, this theme plays out a lot in the biblical text. We see it with Noah. This is a case of they rise above the water. This is effectively by the nations. As the story goes down, and they look back at this, they're like, "Oh, Noah, innocent. He survived the water. People that died in the water, guilty." You're going to have this incident here in a second with Moshe, and then you have the children of Israel passing over dry ground and sea of reeds. This is that same concept that they're passing on. The water is not destroyed. The chaotic water is not destroying them, but then it gets the Egyptians. So the nations in Canaan are like, "Wow, the gods are on this guy's side, on the Israelite side, and Egypt was in the wrong." Jonah's the same idea, where he's cast over the boat and the storm is calm, and they think to themselves, "Oh, yep, he is the guilty party." But then he's swallowed and preserved, and he survives the chaotic waters. And so Nineveh, that would have been a witness to Nineveh, like, "Wow, this guy, the gods declared him innocent." And so, in fact, this has a narrative way that tells a story that's culturally understood that may not necessarily be quite as explicit in our text. So with that background, we go to chapter 2. It says, "And a man from the house of Levi went and took a Levite daughter. And the woman conceived and bore a son. And she saw that he was goodly, and she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took a wicker ark for him and caulked it with resin and pitch and placed the child in it and placed it in the reeds by the banks of the Nile. And his sister stationed herself at a distance to see what would be done to him. And Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the Nile, her maidens walking along the Nile. And she saw the ark amidst the reeds and sent her slave girl and took it. She opened it up and saw the child. And look, it was a lad weeping. And she pitied him and said, 'This is the child, one of the children of the Hebrews.' And the sister of Pharaoh's daughter and his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, 'Shall I go and summon a nursing woman from the Hebrews that she may suckle the child for you?' And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Go.' And the girl went and summoned the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Carry away this child and suckle him for me, and I myself will pay you wages.' And the woman took the child and suckled him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became a son to her. And she called his name Moses, for from the water I drew him out." So we see the mother nursing him for 3 months, and then she, for some reason, feels that she can't hide him any longer. And so she makes an ark, a tevah, and makes an ark for him. And then she places it in the water by these reeds. And so he is dry and safe above the chaotic water, and he's in the midst of these reeds. This is going to be kind of a foreshadowing of the Sea of Reeds situation in chapter 14. It's by the banks of the Nile, and I would like to think that they were hoping and strategically placing it there to be seen, but I don't know for sure. And Pharaoh's daughter has compassion on him. And so the thing that her father wants is the death of these boys, but it pricks her heart enough to not do that. And then she finds a way to get her. The sister comes, Miriam, most likely Miriam, tells her that, "Hey, I've got a nursing mother that can take care of this boy." She says, "Go do it." So Moses' mother gets him back. The thing that she wanted most in this scenario was that her son would survive, and ideally that she would get him back. She could take care of him, and she gets that. And then on top of that, she gets paid for it, which is kind of a foreshadowing of what's going to happen when the children of Israel leave. The thing that they want most is to leave Egypt and be free from this place, and they're going to get it. And then on top of that, they're going to make a bunch of money out of it as well. So it's just an incredible favor from the Lord. It says, "And it happened at that time that Moshe grew up." Now, in Moshe's name, important to note, is that his name means something to the effect of drawn out of water, because of the association of this whole scene here. And that idea of water and his name association is an important thing to keep in mind every time. Um, in various forms, he's got this relationship with water, and he's going to be a man that draws out water for people and all this kind of thing. So keeping that idea close by will help us as we continue on in the story. It says, then it happened at that time that Moshe grew up and went out to his brothers and saw their burdens. He saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. And he turned this way and that and saw that there was no man about. He struck down the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. This part is interesting to me. It is. I assume that I didn't read a whole lot of commentaries on it. I would like to think that there's probably a lot of debate as to what's going on here and what's his intentions. Because I can debate in my own mind what is exactly going on with Moshe. Did he intend to kill the man? His consequence was that he was able to effectively run to a city of refuge, which is usually for someone that accidentally kills somebody. But he looks both ways. It seems to me that he's like, am I going to get away with it? Can I get away with it? I think that would be my instinct. But I did hear one commentary mention that perhaps that he's looking about for a man, thinking to himself, is someone going to stop this injustice that I see here? Is anyone going to do anything about it? I guess not. I guess I would. Maybe that was his motivation. But either way, he is a man that is bent towards some action, and he doesn't really like injustice. And so he strikes down this man, this Egyptian, and buries him, which kind of tags back to Cain a little bit, but a little bit different. Then he went out the next day, and look, 2 Hebrew men were brawling. And he said to the one in the wrong, why should you strike your fellow? Now, this is the first recorded words that Moshe says, the first of many. But it is going to be somewhat indicative, and it's something to stop and ponder. Why should you strike your fellow? Why should you strike your neighbor? Why should you strike your brother? And when I read this time I was reading through it, and I had to pause and think about it for a while, and I was like, a question that's writing, it's pointing towards me, and in a way it's pointing towards you. And as we wrestle with this, why do we strike our fellow? Why do we come down to that point? Why is that so universal in everybody that we can want to strike back at somebody or be led by anger to them? Messiah would one day, many years later, 1,500 years later, say something to the effect of, if you have a struggle with your brother, don't come to the temple with your offering until you resolve this thing. Get this thing under control. This quarrel, this don't let it lead on. So that's something to ponder and think about. That this is going to be kind of his search for justice is going to be kind of a defining factor for Moshe. And he said, who set you a man prince and judge over us? Is it to kill me that you mean as you killed the Egyptian? And Moses was afraid, and he thought, surely the thing has become known. When Pharaoh heard of this thing, he sought to kill Moses. And Moses fled from Pharaoh's presence and dwelled in the land of Midian. And he sat down by the well, and the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. And they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water the father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them off. And Moses rose and saved them and watered their flock. So we see him drawing water, and that water being associated with salvation as well. And they came to Reuel, their father, and he said, why have you hurried back today? And they said, an Egyptian man rescued us from the hands of the shepherds. And what's more, he even drew water for us and watered the flock. And he said to his daughters, and where is he? Why did you leave the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses agreed to dwell with the man, and he gave Zipporah his daughter to Moshe. And she bore a son, and he called his name Gershom. And he said, a sojourner I have been in a foreign land. Gershom means stranger there. So here he is a stranger in a foreign land. They identify him as an Egyptian. I found that interesting. And it happened when a long time, verse 23, and it happened when a long time had passed that the king of Egypt died. And the Israelites groaned from the bondage and cried out. And their plea from the bondage went up to God. And God heard their mourning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God saw the Israelites, and God knew. From this point, that he's going to enter into a section where he's going to reveal himself in a very intimate way. And I suggest to you that the statement here, this last verse that I just read, it says, God heard their moaning. God remembered his covenant. God saw the Israelites, and God knew. Is that God is wanting to associate, I think, these verbs, these actions, with the character of himself. That he's going to reveal himself, and he wants us to know that he is a God that hears. He heard Hagar as she cried out in the wilderness, and Ishmael when he cried out in the wilderness, Hannah when she was in need of a child. He hears us when we cry and plead, when we pray and we seek. He remembers his covenant and acts on behalf of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He remembered Noah in the ark. He remembered Joseph when he was in the pit, in the prison. He sees the affliction of the Israelites. He sees the affliction in our own lives when oppressive forces come against us. And he knows their pain. And he experienced it through the death of his own son, that he knows this pain in a relatable way. And so when we are going through these struggles in these lives, that we can be rest assured that we do have a Father in heaven that does see. And he may not be quick by our standards to respond. But he sees, he hears, and he knows, and he remembers. And see, these are some of the defining verbs of who our Father is. And now we're going to enter into chapter 3, where we get to learn a little more. Chapter 3, verse 1, and Moshe was herding the flock of Yitro, his father-in-law, priest of Midian, and he drove the flock into the wilderness and came to the mountain of God. This is a foreshadowing event as well, is that he's been, I guess at this point, probably about 40 years of herding flocks, and then he's going to take the flock Bamidbar into the wilderness, to the mountain of God. And not too long from now, he's going to take the people of Israel and do the same thing. And it seemed to me like a nice little example of when you're trusted with little, then you can be trusted with more. So it seems like he had this test of dealing with sheep and goats and whatever the herds were. And God saw that he did that quite faithfully. And then he's given a higher responsibility, taking care of people. So being faithful with little has now led to being, will soon lead to being faithful with a lot. And it says, and Yahweh's messenger appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. This is the first mention in the scroll of the name of the Lord, Yahweh. And he saw and looked, the bush was burning with fire, and the bush was not consumed. So we have Yahweh, we have a messenger. Well, this is Yahweh's messenger, kind of one and the same, but and we have flaming fire. Then we have this bush that's very alive, a not dying bush. These are more Edenic, Garden of Eden kind of imageries. Where the last scene we saw with the exit of the Garden of Eden was we saw this messenger with a flaming sword. And beyond it was the tree of life that they could no longer be near. But Moses is stirred by this sight enough that he thinks to himself, let me pray, turn aside that I may see this great sight, why the bush does not burn up. And Yahweh saw that he had turned aside and to see. And God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Hineni, here I am. And he said, come no closer here, take off your sandals from your feet, for the place you are standing on is holy ground. So we have heaven meeting earth. We have the realm of God is now at earth. So this is a holy place. And he said, I am Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob. And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God, Elohim. And Yahweh said, I indeed have seen the abuse of my people that is in Egypt, and its outcry because of its taskmasters. I have heard, for I know its pain. And I've come down to rescue it from the hand of Egypt, and to bring it up from that land to a goodly and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. And now look, the outcry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression from which the Egyptians oppressed them. And now go, that I may send you to Pharaoh, and bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring out the Israelites from Egypt? And he said, for I will be with you. And this will be my sign, that I myself have sent you. I love that in the midst of his self-doubt of who he is and his lack of self-confidence that he can accomplish such a goal, God doesn't sit there and tell you, you're Moses. You were trained in the kingdom of Pharaoh. You've been a shepherd for all these years. He doesn't tell him all his pedigree and like why he's good for this. He just says, I'm going to be with you. And let that be true for all of us in our own self-doubt and questioning of where we are. Like, why would God want to use me? Who am I? If God has chosen you and if he is with you, then many things can be accomplished, despite our failings, despite our flaws. He said, and let this be a sign for you that I myself have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this mountain. And Moshe said to God, look, when I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moshe, Ahaye Asher Ahaye. I will be who I will be. Ahaye Asher Ahaye. And I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that's how I've heard it pronounced. This, I will be who I will be. I am that I am, some versions will say. This is quite a profound, many books have been written on such topics, and I can't scratch the surface of the wisdom of the name of our Father. But I find in my own personal life, when I think about names and the meanings of names, and they're so significant, but every name under the sun is limiting. It has a limit to it. It's not like I'm the God, I'm the creator God, I'm the God of righteousness, I'm the God who sees, and it's all those are limiting to a certain facet. But to have a name of I will be who I will be, or I am that I am, is all encompassing. It is the wisest statement that I could ever come to. And this is one of those parts of the text that reassures me and like creates a firm foundation of faith for me that this is the wisest. Any other God that came up with any other name disqualifies them from being the Almighty. Like this is the existent one. There's no more wisdom that could be placed. It is just mind-blowing to me. And it is the wisest thing, and it reassures me of the truth of the text. And he said, thus shall you say to the Israelites, Ahaye has sent me to you. So when he had asked the question, they're going to ask me, what is his name, and what shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, Ahaye Asher Ahaye. 3 words. I will be who I will be. And then he said, thus you shall say to the Israelites, Ahaye has sent me. So we see written three words, Ahyeh, Asher, Ahyeh. But then when he answers the question, he says, what you're going to say is Ahyeh has sent you. So we see three, but we hear one. We see three, we hear one. And God said further to Moshe, thus shall you say to the Israelites, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. 1, 2, 3. Sent me to you. And that is my name forever, and thus I am invoked in all ages. Go and gather the elders of Israel and say to them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here once again we have God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and then when it's repeated later, it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We have three, but all three are actually just one. They're all the same. And he says, I have surely marked what I've done to you in Egypt, and I have said, I will bring you up from the abuse of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will heed your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and together you shall say to him, Yahweh, Elohim of the Hebrews, happened upon us. And so let us go, pray, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. And I, on my part, know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, except through a strong hand. And I will send out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I shall do in the midst. And afterwards will he send you out. And I will grant his people favor in the eyes of Egypt. And so when you go, you will not go empty-handed. But each woman will ask of her neighbor and of the sojourner in her house ornaments of silver and ornaments of gold and robes, and you shall put them on your sons and your daughters, and you shall despoil Egypt. So God's revealing his name. He's revealing his character, that he is one who is acting on behalf of the oppressed. And he's going to reveal himself to the king of Egypt and all of Egypt through mighty wonders. And once again, they're going to despoil Egypt. In chapter 4, verse 1, Moses answered and said, But look, they will not believe me, nor will they heed my voice. For they will say, Yahweh did not appear to you. And Yahweh said to him, What is that in your hand? He said, A staff. And he said, Fling it to the ground. And he flung it to the ground, it became a snake, and Moses fled from it. See, for Moses, this staff almost certainly was a source of comfort for him. He's in the wilderness, he can keep wild beasts at bay, perhaps. People can see him from afar. It's always something that he can have between him and someone else. It's a sign of his authority, perhaps. I can imagine there'd be an assortment of comfort in being able to hold the staff. But God says, release the thing that you are holding on to. This thing that you're holding on to that you like and makes you comfortable. Maybe it makes you feel good. But I want you to release it. And I can't help but think that this is obviously a true thing, but also a metaphor for the life of any believer that is encountered with the living God, where he might say, this thing that you have comfort in, your retirement fund, your gun, your spouse, whatever it is that seems to be this thing that's keeping you comfortable here, I want you to let it go. And what I can do with it is make it more. I can do wonders through this thing. If you release it, if you let it go. If Moses had never let it go, I don't know what would have happened. But thankfully, he did, and he trusted. And he was even scared of the result of a snake coming up. And then the Lord says to Moses, reach out your hand and grasp its tail. And of course, I had to teach my kids the other day. I was like, this is not a good idea, generally speaking. You want to grab a snake, the back of its neck. This would take tremendous trust and faith to grab it by its tail, that it's not going to turn around and bite you. But being that you're talking to the living God, hopefully your confidence would be like, yeah, God's got me. God's got me. And sure enough, he trusts and he grabs it. And it became a staff in his grip. So that they will believe that Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. And Yahweh said further to him, bring, pray, your hand into your bosom. And he put his hand back into his bosom and brought it out. And look, it was blanched like snow. And he said, put your hand back into your bosom. And he put his hand back into his bosom and brought it out. And look, it came back like his own flesh. So it was like leprous or leprous, which is related to death. It's like being the living dead. So this is, in some form, instantaneous healing, but could be in some kind of symbolic way, like life and death and life. And so, should they not believe you, and should they not heed the voice of the first sign, they will believe the voice of the second sign. And should it be that they do not believe even both of these signs, do not heed your voice, you shall take water of the Nile and pour it on dry land, and that water that you take from the Nile will become blood on dry land. And these signs are, and we've talked about this over the past few months as we go through our New Testament studies, but they're very much related to signs that Messiah would give. He's going to be kind of like that staff, that Moses' staff that's lifted up when he's on the cross. And he's going to be a healer of leprosy. He's also going to be one that dies and resurrects. And then, of course, the blood is the water turned to wine, the first sign that he gives. So these are very much related to Messiah. And Moshe said, please, my Lord, no man of words am I, not at any time in the past, nor now, since I have spoken to your servant, for I am heavy-mouthed and heavy-tongued. And Yahweh said to him, who gave man a mouth, and who makes him mute or deaf, or sighted or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? And now go, and I myself will be with your mouth, and will instruct you in what to say. And he said, please, Yahweh, send, pray, by the hand of him you would send. And the wrath of Yahweh flared up against Moshe. And he said, is there not Aaron the Levite, your brother? I know that he can indeed speak. And what's more, look, he's coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, his heart will rejoice. And you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I myself will be with your mouth and with his mouth. And I will instruct you both what you should do and what you shall speak, and what he will speak for you to the people. And so he will be the mouth for you, and you will be like a God. And this staff you shall take in your hand, with which you will do signs. And the staff is eventually, I try to keep track of the staff, and I lose track of it. It's like Moses' staff, and then it's Aaron's. It's like, it seems to me to be the one and the same, Moses' staff and Aaron's staff. I could be wrong, but it's an important staff. And it eventually, if it's the same one that Aaron has, it ends up budding leaves, and then it's kept in the Ark of the Covenant. But Moses is going to be like a God in a way. And between these two brothers working side by side, some of the flaws of one can be covered up by the other, and these two are going to be stronger than one individually, which could preach on Sunday, but we'll leave it there. And Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me go, pray, and return to my brothers who are in Egypt, and I may see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said, go in peace. And Yahweh said to Moses in Midian, go, return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. And Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on the donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took God's staff in his hand. And Yahweh said to Moshe, when you set out to return to Egypt, See all the portents that I will put in your hand, and do them before Pharaoh. But I, on my part, shall toughen his heart, and will not send the people away. And you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says Yahweh, my son, my firstborn is Israel. And I said to you, Send off my son that he may worship me. And you refused to send him off. And look, I am about to kill your son, your firstborn. So we have this, God tells him kind of what's going to take place here, this mighty deliverance, and it's going to take place in the midst of Pharaoh having a hard heart, but he's going to, the word is like toughen or make heavy, but God, this usually gets into like a debate of like, does God control all of our actions, and is he predestined everything? And I think this will be taught more in the later chapters, so someone else will teach on this. But I'll touch on it just a little bit. This strengthening of the heart is the way that I like to render it, is that he's already determined to go down this path, and God wants him to go down that path so that God can continue to reveal himself and make his name known and defeat all the gods of Egypt. So he's going to strengthen the heart of Pharaoh to endure, to bring out that end. And I think that will be talked about more in other Torah portions later. Then we have this very interesting story here, verse 24. And it happened on the way at the night camp that Yahweh encountered him and sought to put him to death. And Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched it to his feet. And she said, Yes, a bridegroom of blood you are to me. And he let him go. Then did she say, a bridegroom of blood by the circumcision. So this version that I have here intentionally makes it really, it's trying to be fairly literal and kind of write it in such a way that's awkward, and it's difficult to determine whether this is Gershom or Moses that is like, who's getting threatened with death, and it's a strange thing, but it does seem to be very much after God has just revealed that he's going to destroy the firstborn of Pharaoh. Then this comes in, and it's like a little foreshadowing of a Passover event where this little bit of blood is needed to be a barrier between life and death. A barrier between life and death. So it's circumcision here. And Yahweh said to Aaron, Go to the wilderness to meet Moshe. And he went and encountered him on the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moshe told Aaron all of Yahweh's words with which he had sent him, and all the signs with which he charged him. And Moshe and Aaron with him went, and they gathered the elders of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words that Yahweh had spoken to Moshe. And he did signs before the people's eyes. And the people believed, they heeded that Yahweh had singled out the Israelites, that he had seen their abuse, and they did obeisance and bowed down. And we're going to end here soon. I'll go just a little bit more. And afterwards, Moshe and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, Thus said Yahweh Elohim of Israel, Send off my people, that you may celebrate to me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, Who is Yahweh, that I should heed his voice and send off Israel? Pharaoh does not know. Pharaoh thinks that he is a divine being. He encounters all sorts of Egyptian gods. He knows a lot of gods. He doesn't know Yahweh. Maybe he had heard of Yahweh, but he doesn't have any kind of relational interest in Yahweh, the God of Israel. And so God is going to show through his actions and through the signs and wonders, but he's going to show Pharaoh, and he's going to show Egypt, and then that's his name. This whole event is going to be right in line with his name. And then it will carry on that all the nations are going to be like, wow, what their God did, and he took them out of Egypt, and he brought them through. This is all going to be related to God's name. And I think I need to conclude there with that we have a God that hears the cry, acts on the behalf of the oppressed, stands in the gap, and he delivers those. And so we're looking forward to that day where we can be delivered from our current circumstance to one day live in the promised land. But right now we're in exile and we're doing God's work of sharing the good news. So I'm going to close this out in prayer, and then I think my father is going to do Kiddush, and then there will be one final song. So, Father in heaven, we bless your holy name. For you're great and mighty, and you do wondrous deeds. Father, we are grateful for the way that you reveal yourself to us, Lord, and the wisdom of your word, and the kindness that you showed to our forefathers. Father, I pray that we would be a people that was worthy of you, Lord, that we would be a people of faith and faithfulness to you and your covenant, as you, Lord, are always faithful to your covenant. Father, I pray that you would guide us in this week and stir us to be a people that can bear your image, represent your name properly. Lord, that we would not bring shame or dishonor to your name, but you would bring glory to your name. That when people hear about you through us, they are brightened and enlightened, and that there's hope, and they can have faith. So, Father, we just praise you, and it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.